Beloved friends, colleagues, leaders, builders of our Reform movement, it's an honor and a joy to be with you in these closing moments of this year's Recharging Reform Judaism Conference. I feel like we're just waiting for the shofar to be sounded, and then we'll go break fast and carry on. But truly a gift to be here. I want to thank each and every one of you for your deep commitment to our Reform movement and to the Jewish future we are building together. I want to especially acknowledge my friend Rabbi Ami Hirsch, whose leadership together with that of his father, Rabbi Dick Hirsch, Zichrono Livracha, has helped shape the movement that we love and that we serve. Now, we gather at a moment of profound uncertainty and at the same time a moment of profound possibility. There are voices all around us predicting decline in Jewish life, decline in institutions, decline of liberal religion, decline of Jewish cohesion itself. Some look at shrinking affiliation numbers or rising polarization and conclude that the great era of North American Reform Judaism is ending. I do not believe that. I hope that many of you, if not all of you, do not believe that. I believe we're standing at the beginning of a new chapter in the story of the Jewish people. And I believe that it will take all of us together to build that future with strength, with meaning, and with joy. For more than 2 centuries, Reform Judaism has been courageous enough to ask not only what have Jews believed, but even more importantly, what does Judaism demand of this moment? That is why we survived. That is why we mattered. And that is why we still matter today. Now, the first generations of Reformed Jews helped Jews to enter the modern world with dignity and confidence. They built congregations, schools, camps, seminaries, and communities that transformed Jewish life in North America. And the unbridled universalism of the 1885 Pittsburgh Platform no longer defines how we see our role in the world. We no longer believe that caring for our own people is outdated tribalism. Rather, it's an essential component of Jewish peoplehood. We're still here a century and a half later because previous generations knew that being Reformed meant being willing to change and adopt and even transform. We no longer need to worry about how Jews fit into America. We need to focus instead on why Judaism matters in today's America. Not whether Jews are accepted, but whether Jewish life is compelling. Not whether our institutions survive, but whether our souls awaken and feel a sense of value, of purpose, of identity. The next era of Reform Judaism will not be built primarily on fear, guilt, nostalgia, or dogma. It will also not be built principally on responding to those who wish us harm, and there are plenty of those people, but rather with bold vision from within. It will be built because people are searching for meaning, community, moral clarity, purpose, and hope. And we must also understand something with compassion and honesty, of which you are all well aware. People are struggling. They're struggling with what they are seeing in Israel. They are struggling with political extremism and moral confusion in America. They're struggling with loneliness, uncertainty, distrust of institutions, and exhaustion. Many Jews are carrying heartbreak, fear, anger, alienation, and grief all at the same time. And if we are serious about building the future of Reform Judaism, we cannot respond by pushing people away because they are not where we wish they were. We must meet people where they are, spiritually, emotionally, morally, politically, and bring them close. That does not mean abandoning our values. It means embodying them. Movements do not grow when people are shamed into belonging. but they do grow when people are invited into covenant. The role of Reform Judaism is not to create ideological conformity. It's to help people wrestle with complexity through Torah, community, and Jewish life. Our task is to build a Judaism so compelling, thoughtful, morally serious, and spiritually alive that even people who feel distanced will want to enter. That is why I believe the Union for Reform Judaism must become far more than a denominational institution. The URJ must become the great convener, catalyst, and engine of Jewish renewal in North America. A movement that invests unapologetically in the next generation. A movement that reimagines synagogue life instead of managing decline. A movement that trains courageous rabbis, cantors, educators, and lay leaders for a rapidly changing Jewish future. A movement that sees camps, youth programs, Israel experiences, spirituality, justice work, music, and learning not as separate programs, but as one sacred ecosystem of Jewish formation. We need a reform movement that is networked instead of siloed, mission-driven instead of maintenance-driven, spiritually ambitious instead of institutionally cautious. And we must once again become a movement of builders, builders of community, builders of Jewish confidence, builders of moral imagination, builders of a liberal Zionism rooted in love, honesty, and hope, builders of a Judaism capable of shaping the future instead of merely reacting to it, because the future will not wait for us. So let me say this clearly. I am not interested in presiding over the slow contraction of Reform Judaism. I believe we're called to lead one of the great Jewish renaissances of the 21st century, a renaissance of Jewish learning, of belonging, of spirituality, of Jewish peoplehood, of deep connection to Israel, and of moral leadership. The path, it won't be easy, and we will not agree on everything. But this movement has always known how to evolve without surrendering its soul. And so I'm asking all of us, rabbis, cantors, educators, organizers, lay leaders, philanthropists, congregants, and seekers, to think big. So what should the coming years actually look like? First, we must dramatically deepen Jewish literacy and spiritual life. We cannot build a serious Jewish future on thin Judaism. Every Reformed congregation, and we have a lot of them, should be a center for lifelong Jewish learning and spiritual growth. And if they're in an isolated area, they can be a cooperative of congregations together, offering that kind of deeper learning. We need to not just focus, obviously, on the pediatric, but on the adults who are even more hungry to learn, pray, wrestle, and grow. We need thousands more Jews studying Torah regularly, learning Hebrew, engaging deeply with Jewish texts, practicing meaningful rituals, and experiencing Shabbat not as performance, but as sanctuary. Jewish learning is not enrichment, it's essential, like the water we drink every day. Second, we must invest aggressively, unapologetically in the next generation, not incrementally, transformationally. The greatest investment we can make in Jewish continuity is to foster serious, immersive Jewish experiences. That means expanding camps, youth programs, Israel travel, service learning, campus engagement, and young adult communities. And let me say this clearly, the Union for Reform Judaism is going to double down on youth engagement in every possible way. Because immersive Jewish experiences change lives. A summer at camp changes lives. A semester in Israel changes lives. Deep friendships rooted in Jewish community changes lives. A summer at any one of our 14 overnight camps is an opportunity to build friendships with Israeli campers and staff, to discover the deep commonality that binds us to our Israeli siblings. A summer in Israel also is an opportunity to forge peer-to-peer relationships beyond ideologies and headlines. Serious encounters with Torah, Hebrew, Israeli society, service, and Jewish responsibility shape identity in ways that lectures and slogans never can. And we must expand access so financial barriers never determine whether a young person can enter a transformational Jewish experience. We also need to stop speaking about our young Jews primarily as a retention problem. They are not a problem to solve. They are leaders waiting to be empowered. I want a reform movement where thousands more young people see Judaism not as something reluctantly inherited from the past, but as a compelling framework for building a meaningful Jewish future. Third, we must reimagine synagogue for the 21st century. The synagogue remains one of the greatest inventions in all of Jewish history, but many existing models are no longer sufficient on their own. Over the next years, in addition to shaping vibrant congregations, the URJ will help launch and scale new models of Reform Jewish community, micro-communities, digital learning networks, justice and Israel fellowships, retreat models, musical communities, and experimental forms of Jewish gathering that reach beyond traditional membership frameworks. Some communities will thrive in large, iconic buildings. Others will thrive in living rooms, retreat centers, coffee shops, and online spaces. The question is not whether Judaism will change. I'll spare you the suspense. It always has, and it always will. The question is whether we will shape that change with intention and courage. Fourth, we must strengthen Jewish peoplehood and our relationship to Israel, not through abstractions, but through relationships. We need more partnerships between North American Reformed congregations and Israeli Reformed communities. These exchanges build real relationships between North American Reformed Jews and Israelis, and they open hearts and eyes to a deep interdependence. Our Israeli partners impact our community, to be sure, but make no mistake about it, we impact theirs as well. Just ask Rabbi Gilad Kariv, whose Jewish soul was ignited when he spent time in Memphis as a young man. Fifth, we need to strengthen our relationships with our interfaith partners. Yes, I know. Some of them abandoned us after October 7th, but not all. And we must continue to show up with our deep commitments to Israel and Jewish people globally. Showing up matters even when it's hard, as I experienced last summer at the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America's General Assembly in Phoenix. I almost left on the first night of the conference. It was after a very, very harsh debate and discussion over resolutions about Israel and Palestine. My close colleague, then still the presiding bishop, Elizabeth Eaton, came down off the plenary stage and she looked at me and she said, "What's the matter?" I said, "I just couldn't listen to that. And I think I'm simply going to leave tonight and forego my opportunity tomorrow to address the plenary at the convention." She said, "Why don't you take as much time tomorrow during the plenary to say everything that you feel compelled to say to the church, to the thousands who are there?" Well, I'm not going to lie, not everybody wanted to hear my message, particularly my deep commitment and love for Israel. But most listened with open hearts to my plenary speech, and surprisingly, they gave me a standing ovation. I am not a magician. I did not do something extraordinary. I did what we do, which is to show up and explain to our longtime partners with whom we have worked closely on critical issues. We've worked with them to stand up against the original Martin Luther's anti-Judaism. We've stood with them at Holocaust Remembrance Day. And I reminded them who they were to us and who we were to them. And they responded as they did. Let me just say, our Jewish community will not be safe only with more cameras and more security protocols. We need all of them, but they are not sufficient. A huge part of our safety is dependent on building solidarity with our neighbors. And we must have faith that in our convictions, we will teach a Zionism mature enough to hold complexity without collapsing into cynicism or denial, a Zionism rooted in love, responsibility, and shared destiny. 6, Reform Judaism must become a leading force for rebuilding liberal democracy and moral courage in North America. And let's also say to do our part to strengthen liberal democracy in Israel is a big piece of our puzzle. At a moment when public life is becoming crueler, more polarized, more dehumanizing, we must model another way. How to disagree without hatred, how to pursue justice without self-righteousness, how to defend democracy without abandoning nuance, how to balance universal human dignity with deep commitments to Jewish peoplehood. Extreme voices are telling us that Jewish safety and democracy are at odds with one another, when in fact we know they are inextricably linked together. Democratic norms such as the rule of law, the protection of rights and liberties for all, have kept Jews and minorities safest over the centuries, and they must be strengthened. Some might label such work that I just described as a remnant of our movement's more universal core values at the expense of strengthening Jewish particularity. But such a formulation misses the point. Our work on behalf of liberal democracy is ultimately about helping attain greater security for the Jewish people, as well as standing up for our core values and commitments as Jews. And it's rooted in robust institutions, not the whims of leaders who bestow or revoke their patronage at will. And finally, we must build a culture of belonging, expansive enough to hold the full diversity of the Jewish people. For us, diversity is a theological imperative, not a battle in America's culture wars. Our diversity is our superpower. In our society, which too often demonizes differences, we know it is an expression of divinity. Interfaith families, Jews of color, LGBTQ plus Jews, Jews by choice, spiritual seekers, struggling or unsure Zionists, political conservatives. They are all critical parts of who we are. Each brings an experience and an essential perspective that enriches our community. Instead of experiencing increasing polarization, our communities can be where we learn how to engage deeply and meaningfully with people who are not just like us. We cannot demand that people arrive fully formed before they belong. We cannot expect that every person, new or long-standing to our community, will view Judaism, Israel, politics, or the world in exactly the same way we do. We must become experts at opening doors instead of guarding gates. Yes, this vision will require resources, experimentation, leadership, philanthropy, openness, and risk. But above all, it will require confidence. Confidence that Reform Judaism still has something essential to say. Confidence that Jewish wisdom can still transform human lives. And confidence that the Jewish future is not something happening to us, but something we are capable of shaping. That is the movement I believe we can become over the next years. More rooted, more innovative, more spiritually alive, more capable than ever of helping Jews and Judaism flourish in the 21st century. That is where we must go. And I'll close where I began, with my gratitude for your ideas, your resolutions, your commitment to play a leading role in making sure our Jewish community is strong, proud, thoughtful, morally serious, and deeply committed to Jewish learning and living. And with all the urgency this moment demands, that is where I suggest, I implore all of us to make that path clear and to walk that path together and to build that Jewish future beginning in this moment, not just in the next days or weeks or months, but in the coming years. And not some of us, but all of us together. Ken Yehi. Let me do a quick transition. We're blessed to have with us today Anna Kislansky. She is the inspiring CEO of our Israeli Reform movement. She's been here. Some of you have had a chance to meet her and sit with her over coffee or a meal. But she has a profound message to bring to us. She has an opportunity to share the amazing transformational work going on every day in our movement. And I hope that all of you will join us at the URJ in committing to give them resources, because they are in this moment experiencing the dollar. The dollar is so weak next to the shekel, and they are literally facing dramatic, they're going to have to cut back not only programs, but probably eliminate positions. This is a moment they're reaching out to us, and because we are not only supporters, but we are partners in that work, I hope that you'll join me and in our movement in committing the resources to allow them to continue to do their work and to increase the incredible impact that they're having.